which will vary if we have different shapes of spiral, different length, and different width, yes, which we will talk about in our parameters. Okay, so the torque. So here we did our experiments using r equals k theta. So we draw the r equals k theta, and then we print it out to cut out the spiral. So the endpoint will be 0 and t pi, and r will equals to kt pi. And here we take a small portion of drag force, and we integrate and we do some integration into this formula here. So as you can see, this whole part from here to here can be simplified into a constant called c. Okay, so the square of the angular velocity will be proportional to the torque, and c will represent a coefficient summarizing the equation above, because the angular velocity is here. Okay, so using Newton's second law of motion, the net torque would equals to the moment of inertia times the angular acceleration. But when the t, because we believe that this motion it will reach so once it starts spinning, it will reach a terminal speed. So when we have a terminal speed, the angular velocity would equals to 0. Yes, so we will get that the hot air will equal to the drag force. So we measure the terminal velocity to get the hot air. Okay, so consider the relationship between angular velocity or angular momentum and the torque. So this equation only fits when we view the spiral as a thin disk. And yes, we did it this way. And so we substitute this drag force into c omega squared, and so the hot air will be equals to this. However, as I mentioned, the angular acceleration will be 0 when it reaches the terminal velocity. So the hot air will be c omega squared. So by calculating, by measuring omega, we can get the torque of the hot air. Okay, let's move into our experiment. So parameters, as I said, we will be doing different shapes, mass, and width, because we believe that this will affect this, the coefficient, which the drag force, which will depend how big the drag force is, and we will do the intensity of the heat source, because of course, if you have a greater force, we believe that the candle will spin faster. Okay, so this is our experiment setup. So we are in a stable environment, indoor, no air conditioning, and so we use this stick and we stick it with K to stick it to the table when we put the paper spiral on it, and we mark the paper spiral with a red dot to track the angular velocity with tracker, and so we have a power which is the light candle. Okay, so gathering data, we use tracker. Okay, and data abstraction, video analysis, tracker, plot graph, fit curve. So this is a theta t graph. So in the following experiments, we all use this way to find our angular velocity. So we plot a theta t graph, and we use the slope as a angular velocity. Yes, so omega here will be 1069.7 degrees per second. Okay, so this is the omega t graph. So as you can see, the omega will rise and then reach a sort of like a terminal stage, which confirms that this would reach a terminal velocity. And this is the alpha t graph, and you can see that the alpha will get very close to 0, and which also confirms that it will reach a terminal stage. Okay, so our preliminary research. So spiral shapes. We use circle shapes, square shapes, and rectangle and triangle shapes. So we cut different, and the width is 1 centimeter. And we cut the end of the spiral into a line so that the airflow will not affect it. Will not have further effect at the end. Okay, so this is the angular velocity. So we can see that the circle, this is the angular terminal velocity. So the circle will be greater than square, and it will be greater than square. And this happens because circle shape is a continuous airflow. So, and triangle shape and square shape have corners. So the airflow will leak. And square have even more corners than triangle. So the airflow will leak even more, which cause the square to be have the least terminal velocity. Okay, so let's move into our width. So from now on, we'll be doing our experiment using circular spiral. So so experiment design, we use 2 candles, and we cut the spiral with 2 different widths, and often the mass is 0.3 g. And the reason we do this is because we use R equals k theta, and so here is our experimental results, and we can see that the terminal angular velocity goes up as theta increases. However, it decreases unexpectedly at R equals 2 theta, and we'll explain why. Because as you can see in this one, the thicker it is purple. In this one, the thicker it is, this W here is the thickness. So the thicker it is, we can expect that the torque will be greater, which will cause a greater angular velocity. However, in the R equals K, R equals 2 theta, because it's too thick, and we keep the mass the same. So the vertical the distance between the spiral and the candle will be smaller. So we believe that the airflow will not be able to reach it as much. Yes. Okay. Let's move on to our next experiment. So that's. So we use 2 candles because they're in a different area, 1 to 8 amp. So width is the same, and it's the shape comparison. And we only extract the 4, 5, 6 data because 1 to 3 amps it will not spin. The same reason as above. It's too far away from the candle, so the torque of the hot air cannot reach it effectively. And the 7 to 8, it's too long, so it will touch the candle and it will burn. Yes. Okay, so the discussion, the effective area is smaller, the drag torque is smaller, and it will spin faster. As you can see, the 4 amp is greater than 5 and greater than 6. Okay. So the number of candles, so this is our heat intensity, and we'll use different number of candles, 2, 4, 6, 8, and use the same spiral. And the number of candles, so we can get that the greater the number of candles we have, we'll have a greater terminal velocity, which proves that it will have a greater torque. So yes, which is also what we expected. Okay, so more candle will be air into an air, and the air will be hotter and create a greater force. The air will rise faster and push the spiral stronger. Okay, the conclusion. So hot air heated by the candle rises up and pushes the spiral, and when the torque of the hot air and drag forward balance, so alpha, the angular acceleration will reach 0, and we can use our theoretical model to calculate the hot air torque by measuring the angular velocity, and there will be an internal angular velocity, and the circle shape spins up fastest than other shape because it is the most continuous. And the shorter spiral can spin faster because the drag force is less. And angular velocity peak at R equals 1.8 theta because once we get over that, the distance between the spiral and the candle will be too great. And the more candle we make, the spiral can spin faster. Thank you. Do you mean the environment or the hot air flow? Environment, because can show you my experimental setup. So this will do. So we cover it with boxes. So we keep all the window shut, so we believe that the air would not be moving very much.
now I'm going to report our option. Problem statement. The main focus is on the maximum torque of the paper spiral. Or the serial summaries is that the hot air race and make the and hit the hit the spiral so that the spiral started to rotate. And the summary of the experiment is different spirals may have different effect on this experiment, and they use tracking point to track the degree per second of the spiral, so that you can calculate the torque of the spiral. The conclusion is when the width increases, the degree per second increases. Our question is, in this situation, you use a box to stop. Box to stop the airflow of the horizon. I think there may be still vertical airflow. So
you mean the airflow above our experimental setup or within our experimental setup?
above the
How do you think it will affect? Because I believe that this question it's telling us to let the hot air rise. So of course there will be hot air rising, and once we have this here, of course it might go up and out, go out our experimental design, and but I believe that it wouldn't it wouldn't have any effect to this component. So this component is all determined by the candle. Yes. Yes, and this problem statement requires a vertical airflow for this phenomenon to happen. Yes.
And the next question is whether the temperature of the candle will influence the.
I believe that the candle serves more like a power. Yes. So it serves more like a power, and so whether it's hot or cold would not affect it unless you want to consider that maybe if it is too hot, the shape of the paper will change, or for example, it will get a bit. The shape will change, but it's a candle and it's not like some high temperature thing, because the temperature of candle is not high enough for the material like paper to change its shape. So we think it is irrelevant, and the candle here only serves as a power to let this whole phenomenon happen.
However,
sorry, affect the vertical one.
Vertical low.
Vertical effect. Yes. Yes. Sorry. Yes. Yes. The air convection. Higher, right? Yes. So if the hot air gets hotter, then of course it rises up. So if hot air rises and the hotter the air gets, it will rise up faster, and which will we will cause greater torque. But because in this whole experiment we are using the same kinds of candle, so we believe that the temperature generated by the candle will be the same. So if we use one candle, then in this whole experiment, then the candle will create the same torque, and it will rise with the same speed. So what we changed is by using different kind of spirals or different numbers of candles, so that we can actually change the force of the airflow. Yes. Okay. And do you think? Yeah. You have So perhaps you were wondering about my parameters while I did this, and were you wondering about why, what kind of materials I use? Because I only use paper. So if we, for example, if we use thick paper or thin paper, and we think that will also affect this experiment. How do you?
I will use the sheet paper, but it can rotate easily.
So you think thick paper will rotate more smoother? More smooth.
Thin paper will rotate more.
Thin paper will rotate smoother.
Or experience, actually the thin paper will start there and
Oh yeah, so that might be because of the friction. So yes, so talking about the friction, as we shown in our derivation, so we do have friction here. So if we change the material of the paper, or even change the rod, or change the stick, it's steady enough, the friction will change. And talking about that, that's also why in our research here. Yes. Also here, why we don't have a data here, because the spiral mass is too small, so it's like very light and very small spiral. So it is not, so the airflow and the torque created by the hot air is not enough to overcome the friction force on the static friction force on the top. So that it will not rotate.
what do you think about the humidity will use
Humidity. Humidity, I believe it would affect the drag coefficient. So in our theory, the drag force, yes, it would affect this drag coefficient. So the more humid it gets, of course, the drag force will improve. Yes, but we are in. But although the different environment will affect the drag coefficient, but in this experiment we did this experiment all in the same environment, so it's all our laboratory. Yes. And the humidity will also affect the air density load. Yes. So it will change the drag force, of course, but yes, but we did this experiment under the same environment. Or perhaps if you want to do an experiment on humidity, then you might need, for example, a box or a device where you can control the humidity of the air. Yes. So maybe you can investigate on this parameter if you want to do that. Well, are you wondering why we use 2 instead of 1 here? Or no?
Excuse me. Can we change the below for 2 minutes?
What?
We change our opponent for 2 minutes.
Yes, so if you're not very clear about our point, I would like to further elaborate. So of course, because our external setup, we put the plate here to stick it. So we cannot put the candle right beneath the spiral. So if we only use one candle, then the airflow will not be balanced on the horizontal component. So although when we use 2 candles, there will be resonance caused by the airflow, but we still think it's better than 1 candle because it has a better symmetrical characteristic, so it will be more stable. So that's why later on in our experiment, we all use candles that are shaped that are symmetrically. Yes, they are all symmetrically good for this experiment. Do you have any questions?
So, did you measure the mass of the spiral level?
Yes. So we in our experiment here. So for example, this is our width different experiment, and we use the same mass. So in our formula, yes, we didn't do the mass varying experiment because in our theory, it doesn't show that the mass will affect this torque. Yes. So we only did the spiral and candle. Yes. But however, when we change the length of the candle, because when we change the length of the spiral, the mass will also change. But because of this formula, we believe that the mass will not have an effect on the torque that it generates.
Different candles may have different effect.
Yes.
You couldn't show that the 4 candle is the same.
Yes, they are all the same candle and they are the same type between the candle and the top. Yes, because we use the same company and we buy it at the same prices.
So that's the So so now I'm sure that they control the how many candles are per layer when you do other parameters other than the density of 5? Did you consider the synchronization of 2 candles? Synchronization because when you put 2 candles together, there's going to be a synchronization
limitation of 2 minutes.
Yes. I mentioned that in our discussion with the opponent. We consider that, but I think it's still better than 1 because it has a better
Did you consider the airflow to be turbulent or light?
we didn't consider that.
Okay. Have you considered the wobbling effect or wobbling phenomenon in your research?
Yes, we can actually see that because we can actually see that from.
So you have considered.
Yes.
So
But we did.
in one word, will this affect your result for your terminal speed? Yeah.
No.
Okay. How about the opponent? Okay. Have you considered the fold on the spiral of the contact point?
You mean the friction force?
No, the folding. Because the spiral you put on it, there's folding on your
Yes.
spiral.
Oh yes.
We have considered.
It's actually like this. So we did our spiral. So we made our spiral. There's a small.
Okay, thank you. So do you think the folding of the spiral will affect your result? Yes or no?
Yes, it will affect, but we keep the folding.
Okay, so in your theory equation that there's a drag coefficient being shown, is the drag coefficient being obtained through experimentally or theoretically?
Experimental. Yes.
Okay. For an common statement, there's a word suspended. You define suspended.
Yes. So suspended means that it's not contacted to the ground. So the
Okay. So in figure cases,
yes.
so the convection used in your theory is that. Do you think the convection is the same when you observe since that your background with a paper will affect the relative velocity of your airflow? Do you think that will affect your results? Yes or no?
No. The main focus will be the middle. Here.
Do you believe that the set? Do you take a picture? So there's actually a high difference of your fire length. Do you think that this will affect your experiment?
I think that is we can call it as an error. Yes, that would be very high result.
Okay, so I have a reviewer from King Damian. So I'm going to review for problem 13. Can look right. So the problem statement states that there's a paper spiral suspended on a stick. So our key discussion point will be the torque. And during their presentation, their theory used was called the Coanda effect, and also the convection of the heat flow. So Yeah, it is shown different on our computer. But thank you. Okay, so the parameters that are being changed in the experiment is the different radius, width, and shape of spiral and number of handles. And the overview for the reporter, the advantage is that they have an overall logical of the presentation and demonstration video being well presented. And some suggestion that we're going to give for the reporter is that their experimental setup is being flawed, since they didn't consider this interaction between candles and how the heat flow will change, since the system will be more complex. And they didn't control other variables like mass and angle of attack and aspect ratio when changing other parameters. So there's various variables that are not being controlled, and many relevant parameters are being left out, like laminar or turbulent flow or the synchronization of candles, and some terms are not defined. And the theory equations is also flawed because they didn't show the calculation for drag coefficient, which is often calculated through experimental and which couldn't be used in this theory. And there's also experimental errors like the wobble of the paper spiral and the different height in candle. And the overview for the opponent is he catches some major errors that is being shown, and some suggestion is that they didn't discuss the theory that is being presented and the theory equation, and they only discussed the experiment, but still didn't point out some of the flaws like the uncontrolled variables for the turbulence of the airflow, and did not have enough questions asked, and the equilibrium velocity is proportional to the quotient, and it should be the opposite way around, that the torque is proportional to. Okay, so the discussion one is that the opponent asked that does the candle's temperature influence the experiment, and reported that whether it's hot and cold will not change the effect. We disagree with both opponent and reporter. It is highly relevant that the temperature will change the air density that is being used in their theory equation, which will largely change the torque. And the opponent asked, how did you change the force of the airflow? And the reporter said that we changed the shape, length, and width of the spiral. So this is a trivial question that is being shown. And for discussion 4, that do you think humidity will affect the experiment? So, and the reporter said that the humidity affects the air density, which in turn affects the drag force. And this is also being shown in the equation. The opponent asked what's the setup, and we use 2 candles, and so we believe that they should not use 2 candles because it creates interaction between them. Okay, some points that is being missed out is that both the reporter and opponent did not consider the effect of laminar or turbulence, since this would largely affect the fluctuation of the omega being presented in the data. And also they didn't discuss why the omega fluctuation is such large. And they also didn't discuss how the effects of non-control variables and the theoretical data were also not presented, since that they have already shown that they will be able to calculate the drag coefficient in somewhat way. And they also didn't consider the aspect ratio and angle of attack, since the main reason for turbines to turn is the angle of attack. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll give some concluding remarks. So sorry for the opponent, vertical airflow. The candle will give a vertical airflow, and then the temperature of the candle. So to both the opponent and the reviewer, I'll like to restate my statement. So the temperature, so if our environmental temperature is the same, then the hotter the temperature gets, then it will create a stronger convection, which will cause greater force. Okay, and then the opponent also said that the humidity might affect, but we believe that the environment is safe for itself a little bit, and the mass and however, we believe that the mass won't affect the torque of the drag force, but we do agree that we can do, if we have time, we can do further experiment on this. Okay, next page. Okay, some of the reviewer, the 2 candles were resonate, but although the candles were resonate, the 2 candles are still more stable and balanced, because otherwise, when we use 1 candle, it's so unbalanced that the spiral actually sometimes hit the stick. So we believe that 2 is still better than 1. And different parameters, so mass will only affect the friction at the top, but it wouldn't affect the torque. Next page. Okay. So in our so for the temperature, as I mentioned, and the opponent said that our omega t graph is very variable, and that is because our unit is theta. Our unit is degree, so that is why it varies so much. Yes. Thank you.
Now it's our jury's time. Any questions?
Okay, I have one quick question. How do you think if we want to maximize for the radius of the candle to the axis of the spiral? How do you think?
Radius of the candle. You mean?
The radius of the candle to the axis.
Well, I think it has to cover all portion of the spiral. Yes. And so in this setup, because we use the clay to stick the stick, right? And so if we can let the stick and the clay be thinner and put candle that inside it around it, will be better.
So I think the distance between the candle and the stick is that if you put the candle too near the stick, that it didn't cover, the people didn't cover the whole candle, that the radius will be decreased. So the overall torque will also be decreased. And when you put the angle more close to the stick, it will also affect the angle of attack that the heat flow is taking. The turbine that we believe that the optimum distance is about 3/4 of the whole turbine.
So will candle looking at where I think we could find
Okay, any other question from the audience? Yes.
When you calculate the moment of inertia on the spiral, you treat it like it's just the same as the moment of inertia on a disk.
Yes.
Do you think this assumption is correct?
We believe that it has some things to improve, but however, in theory, because when alpha is 0, so our term is I alpha, right?
Alpha is 0.
Yes. So
It has nothing to do with alpha.
yes. I mean that. So I is here, and
Yeah.
so when alpha.
No, I'm talking about the moment of inertia, not the angular acceleration.
Okay.
We believe that it is vertically and it's a S.
All right.
Okay, let's move on to the opponent and viewer. Do you think his assumption that the moment of inertia of the spiral is the same as the disk?
No, I don't think this assumption works on this system, because if the sphere spiral actually goes down and the aspect ratio changes differs with the mass, because there's more gravitational forces acting on such spiral, so it shouldn't be considered as something.
What about you? Do you agree with his assumption or not?
so could you repeat the question?
When he calculates the moment of inertia of the spiral, he assumes that it is exactly the same as that of a disk. Do you think this is correct?
I don't think it's correct because actually the shape of it will the airflow of the carbon I think is not
Okay.
Let's move on to other questions.
I'm interested in the direction of
So you start from the top view. You actually indicate a common compromise.
Yes. If we cut the spiral to in a different way. Yes. Yes. Like so. So here we are. So here the spiral is like this, right? So if we change the spiral to this, then it will rotate the other way.
Yes, I think I agree with the order that this the shape of how they design this spiral, how they draw it will affect how the rotation because it also affects the angle.
I think it's just the cell. So yes, I agree with this because it changes the way of the
in your reporter, in your experiment, you control the pitch, is spiral, and how does that affect the torque? And also, this reviewer talks about this laminar or this turbulent flow. I think that's a very critical thing. Can you comment on the effect?
Sorry about. Can you say
Pitch, spiral pitch. That means your spiral you can sort of extend it or sort of compress it. So then it's a pitch just like this a boat thread.
we let it just drop like naturally, but I believe that
You should control the pitch. No?
no, we just let it
Okay.
naturally just let it drop
So
naturally.
if you you are the airflow is laminar or is balloon.
We did not consider that.
I think they should both consider the pitch and also the laminar flow or turbulent flow because if they didn't control the pitch, that when they changing the mass, the length of this whole aspect ratio will differ, and it also changes other parameters. And the turbulent flow or the laminar flow should be there, kind of like their main analysis on how this airflow will affect the whole rotation of this.
Can you just quickly say what's the effect of pitch?
Pitch, I think it will affect the angle of attack because when pitch is longer, the angle of attack is more.
So I think even the same mass, even they have the same mass, they won't have the same angle. So I think it's not the same situation to discuss this question.
Okay, the jury probably take 2 minutes to finish this board. 下来我们来给分了啊。这个 KK reporter 的分数，请各位老师排一下。我是7分，然后6分、6分、5分、7分。再来是 opponent。3、4、3、4，最后再来给这个 reviewer， 9、8、7、8、6，later during presentation, maybe especially in the discussion session, you guys can also face the jury and speak louder. Don't just talk to each other. We are all guys, you know. So please, and also you don't have to wear a mask. Okay, thank you.
We'd like to challenge problem number 8, which is a potential one.
What are you trying to do?
We'd like to challenge problem number 6, which is tennis ball tower.
Who accept the challenge?
project is number 6 in itself. Okay, this topic is mainly to explore the stress structural limits and the stability of the power like this. Like this. Per layer is 3 volts and the top is 1. You need to put 1 volt on the top. Let's discuss in 2 parts. And the first is the analysis of the volts. Okay, and this is the first force diagram we drew. And on this force diagram, we have encountered the question. That is, where does the picture force point? The same direction inside, or the same direction outside, or one inside, one outside. And if you use the sphere as a volcar, there is only the same direction inside and can have a balance, but because the force and the reaction force are reversed, and there will be an outward force. That is to say, the top cannot be balanced. So we decided to do the most violent way, directly coordinate drawing with vector calculation. And this is the coordinate of the center of the sphere, and the moment arcs and force are the traction flow. Okay, and we have balanced the column formula with force balance and total balance. And this is the full situation of the first layer. And after calculating, I understand why it doesn't make sense at first. Because we think of a two-dimensional depth considering the z direction. Okay. And this is the fourth diagram of the second layer. With 4 force coming from above that gap, it's from above and below, respectively. And this is the force of the third layer. And the force comes from the top bow and the Jackson bows of the layer. And this is 2 parts. The comparison of friction, the second part. And our approach is to directly draw the force backward angle, divide the force into friction and positive force. And then calculate the composition according to the integral side alpha negative friction equals high significant, which equals energy sign alpha also use the same way. And below is also use this method to measure the alpha. And this is the trend line. You can, from this figure, it can be observed that the lower the layer, the smaller coefficient of friction required. So which means that it is more stable of the lower layer. Our conclusions are the first and the third set as the third layer, and the middle layers are the set as the second layers in the third layer. Okay, so its limit is because the difference of this force diagram is only in the value of the force and the friction force. So there is theoretically no limit to height of the towers. And as for the rest of the case, it's like many of these structures stay on top of each other, so the limit should be the same as was analyzed earlier. Okay. And our conclusion is, in the similarities, theoretically speaking, there is no limit. And as for stability, the high level ball is poor, and the lower level ball is better. Thank you.
So now I'd like to make some clarifications. So first of all, I'd like to ask, have you tried other arrangements other than 3 balls per layer? Because the question statement asks you to investigate how, when you change different amount of balls on the layer, and you should investigate that phenomenon. Have you ever changed?
You mean like this?
Yes.
We have tried, but we don't analyze it.
Okay, so you didn't analyze throughout your presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm wondering, where did you get all of these pictures? Are all of these pictures the result from your experiment?
It's from
I think it's probably from the experiment. Okay. So have you actually tried stacking all
yes, but because we have just stack for layers because you need to make it stable. It's difficult.
Yeah. Okay. Sure enough. Can you please show me? So you didn't have your experimental setups, right?
I don't know.
Okay. I'd like you to go down to the trend line. We'll discuss the trend line. Okay. So what we get from here is that as you stack upper, the coefficient of friction is actually increasing, meaning that it will eventually reach a limit because, for example, 1.4 coefficient of friction is probably like the coefficient of friction of a sandpaper, so it's very rough. So a tennis ball can never reach that high level of coefficient of friction. But in your conclusion, you said that theoretically there's no limit, right? But from your trend line, there should be a limit, right?
There.
Probably discuss this later. I'd like to ask, have you ever tried to find different coefficients of friction that as proposed later? Thank you so much. Right. So hello everyone. I'm Daniel from Typt, and I'm the opponent for my team. So the problem statement states that the main focus is probably the structural limits and the stability of the tennis tower. So some brief summary of the report. The theory that he uses was stress analysis, which he mentions unsure friction, which I believe that's probably not that accurate because friction is has a direction, and it is pretty vital to this experiment. So I'd like to further elaborate during the discussion. And the second he uses is force arms and circumventricular coordinates analysis, which I'd also like to question on that later. And the third point is calculation of coefficient of friction. Conclusion, they said that there are no limitations. So for experiment setup, per layers, 3 balls and 1 on top, but this is what they said from the internet, and it's probably their theoretical value, so no actual experiment was actually provided. The parameters were the number of layers. Data shows coefficient of friction and layer relationship. So for reporters, some advantages are good analysis of mathematical equation. Some suggestions would be that the outline of the presentation can be more clear. And many terms are not defined, so maybe more definition would be better. The third one is mathematical calculation is not clear and sometimes even skipped. So I'd like to also discuss on that later. The first one is the unit of the graph is not clear. The fifth one is need to show the derivation of the calculation. Then another suggestion would be that try to do some more experiment. And also do not fully understand the problem statement, as the problem statement states that try out different arrangement methods. And last but not least, number to show need to show actual demonstration of problem and conclusion doesn't seem to fit their experiment and measurement time. Next page. So for setup, suggestions is that they should probably set up their experiment. Experiment data advantages is that only they show their theoretical coefficient of friction, which is pretty good. But the suggestion is that there are no actual experimental data to compare with the theoretical data. This is my discussion structure. I'll first continue on my previous clarification of the theory and mathematical derivation, and then I'll probably move on by discussing some additional parameters that might affect the results, theoretical data correction and discussion. And I believe that's it, and I'd like to start the discussion. Okay, so I'd like you to go up to page 2. Go down a little bit. Next page. Yes. Can you please elaborate on why the direction of the friction is unsure?
Because you have a direction, force, and direction force.
Okay.
Because you have this force and you have another way force like this. So if they will at a center to show up. So you need to so it will.
So you believe that? So can you just tell me why? Which direction probably will the friction go? Or you just can really? Okay. So for structure like this, which is pretty static. Okay, let me show you here. I think for me, I personally believe that. So when we analyze each layer, which we have 3 balls right here. Sorry for the accurate drawing. So basically, what I believe to be the direction of friction is actually going to the center of the 3 balls. So that's why it makes it unstable. I wonder if you will agree with what I'm saying right here.
In the layer or the different layer?
It's every layer.
Every layer.
Yes. Every layer should be like this. Okay, I think we can move on to So I think I'll probably give you another chance to elaborate on the coordinates that you provided, because I think that was really unclear, and maybe you will probably want to write it down on the blackboard, and we'll go down to about the coordinates. Yeah. I think this also gives everyone some time to review. So I believe this is very unclear, and let me help you make it more clear. So first layer is probably going to look like this, right? And you will have A, B, C. So this is viewed from top. And here you have C, D, and F. I believe that's how the coordinates are figured out, right? Okay, so what conclusion did you draw from this coordinate set? Yeah, what conclusion did you draw from this?
We require the superior and this is a unclear number, and we need to calculate this.
Okay, because I believe that this might be helpful when you're calculating the theoretical data, so I think that's probably the usage of this one. Okay, I'd like to move on to the next. Okay, so now you're getting it. So it's the force. So how making sure that of the coordinates help you realize the force. Okay, good. I'm wondering if you can go down to the page where you explain the trend lines. Trend line. The graph. Yes. Would you mind discussing or explaining why here seems to have a larger slope? Like here is there's a large decrease. Why do you think this sort of phenomenon happens? I'm just a little bit curious because to me I feel like
if you have a many layers, it will be more like this.
so it doesn't really have a theoretical data. It doesn't have a theoretical slope. So it's because I cannot see like sort of like a trend right here. So would you like to describe like why there's this
Because of
sharp slope?
the force on the bottom is not the same as the other layers.
Oh, so you're saying that this layer will be increasing the fastest, and then for the rest of the graph you'll just keep a trend line like this. Okay. Then I'd like to move on to what I've just discussed during our clarification part. So you said that you have no limit. Would you like to express why there's no limits?
Because we calculate from the top to the lower, and the top is we can fix the top of this value because because we calculate from the top layer to the lower, and the top layer force is we can draw the top layer force.
But you do realize that a tennis ball average coefficient of friction is usually around 0.9 in real life. So you're saying that in order for this tower to be set up, it should have 1.4 coefficient of friction. So which in real life it doesn't really appear on a tennis ball because a tennis ball usually has 0.9 coefficient of friction. Something that will have 1.4 coefficient of friction is probably a sandpaper. A sandpaper which has a very rough surface. So I'm pretty sure that I mean drawing this theoretical curve is okay, but I believe that establishing a limit for this tower to be set up in real life might be actually helpful. Yes. So that's my basic suggestion for this graph. I'd also like to ask layer from before. So I'm not quite sure if 1.4 coefficient of friction is applying to every single ball. So every single ball has to have a coefficient of friction of 1.4, right? But in real life, there's another thing because every ball has different coefficient of friction. I'd like to ask you whether how you measure the coefficient of friction. Yes. Yes. While you are conducting the experiment, how did you measure the coefficient of friction? Because that is something that is measurable. Yes.
I use the cord and you change its angle from the cord.
Oh, so I believe there's another thing that you might consider adding to your experiment. So there's something that calculates that when you pause it, it calculates the coefficient of friction. So there will be a sharp slope, and on the top, which is the maximum of that point, that is your static friction. That is your coefficient of friction. So that next time when you're trying to conduct this experiment, you might consider adding some steps to find out your coefficient of friction. Okay. Okay. So have you considered deformation in this experiment? Because from a problem statement, it says that you have to find the limit, and I believe deformation in this case is actually really important. So do you know what deformation is? So basically, like you're stacking up the normal pyramid, not the tower like this. So you're stacking up the normal pyramid. Do you think that on one point it will eventually collapse? Yeah, it should. So theoretically, so when you're stacking up a big pyramid on the top, it will eventually reach a point where it will eventually collapse. So that's due to deformation. So let's say you have 1,000 ball or 1,000,000 ball stacking up a pyramid, and that's basically impossible in real life due to deformation. So you're saying that you have no limit, but in real life there should be deformation. So there technically there should sort of be a limit to it because there should be deformation being considered. Okay, so that's probably something that you can consider because adding that to your experiment might make it more well-rounded. I also want you to explain on the mu. On mu, where you explain mu. Yes. Okay, can you please go back to that page and briefly explain? Yes, sure.
We draw the picture and we measure this.
Can you go up where you use tangent instead of cotangent? Oh yes, tangent. Here. Okay.
This
Okay, so because time is running out, I believe this establishment of mu is not inaccurate because one ball should be contacting just two balls. So on each side, on the top layer, for example, at this point, the ball on this side will be in contact with A and C. So maybe considering one ball will not be enough. Okay, thank you. Can you friends, I'll show you. Okay, so I'd like to briefly summarize what we just discussed. So first of all, we discussed basically the experimental setup, which they didn't do. I believe that for their conclusion part, they say that they have no limit, but I believe that is not the real case because for a tennis ball to have that such high coefficient of friction is basically impossible. And another thing to that is that they basically didn't consider the friction, the deformation of the entire tower. And for their theory part, I believe there's a major flaw to it, which is when they're defining the direction of friction. I believe that the direction of friction in every layer is pretty much set because it will never be unsure because all the direction of the friction will be pointed to the center of the plane, of the axis. And that's basically it for our discussion.
First question I want to ask is how to define stability in just one sentence.
Stability is when the tower, when the entire tower doesn't change anymore throughout time.
How to define stability? Just one sentence. Okay. And I'm going to talk about the next question. What condition of the wall that you use is the new one or the used wall? The new wall or the used wall?
Useful.
Okay, and what do you think there are different conditions of the wall? Okay, and I want to know is what is the coefficient will change or the mass will change because of the used one? Oh, okay, I would like to ask the opponent. Do you think the new one and the used one?
Yeah, I think it's definitely because the main key point to this is the coefficient of friction, and what differs from the new ball to the old ball is that their coefficient of friction is definitely different.
There may be a little bit mass change because of the used one. So
Yes, exactly.
You think that the mass change will affect the used?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, I want to ask about say there's a ball on the top and what's the function of this?
You have to provide a force
So you
between
mean
this.
if there's no this ball, then this may not be stable?
Yeah.
Okay, and what do you
Yeah, that's exactly the same. For the entire tower to stand, the upper one is actually the most important one, so that's something that they
Okay,
did.
and I want to turn to the next question, and please turn to the page that the force analysis. The next one. Next. Then the have the tangent. That's this one. And why do you use tangent?
Because this way can
So you mean that we have to use tangent to calculate? And how do the opponents think that? Does it have to use the tangent?
It shouldn't use tangent.
So what should we use?
I think that like what I've just mentioned, it shouldn't be only one point, it should be contacting 2 points. So for me, I would personally
And
use
the
trigonometry for
okay, I'm going to the next
test.
question. How do you calculate the friction coefficient on the wall? Friction coefficient. Okay, I want to ask about how to calculate the friction coefficient.
I think the friction in a
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for the reporter and opponent. I'm the reviewer of this question. here's the problem statement, and we focus on the layer numbers and to build stability of the ball. Okay, and here's the summary of the reporter and his pros and cons. And the phenomenon they use is to make the ball to be stability. And the theory like you basically he used is about the strength analysis of coefficient of the friction and coordinate. And the experiment he did is about the state of the ball and how to measure the coefficient, friction, and I want to say is that he used basically formula to analyze the force arms and the force, and he also used the layers of the ball and to analyze the force of the balls. And his good analysis of the mathematics and cons as the friction is wrong because we think the friction is just will be OCM and didn't analyze the force of that opponent drop. Next, we're going to talk about the summary of the pros and cons about the opponent. And opponent has clear point about the question, like different kinds of form of the tennis ball tower and different coefficient of the friction. And also we talk about the trend line and the experiment is not safe fit. And also they talk about the structure stability. And he spent too much time in asking a specific question to just like the short question and the short question time, and the reporter has answered the problem in a slide, but they didn't find it. Okay, and the discussion about the friction force in the direction, and the reporter says that many forces happen in the same time, so we can't know the force is going on. And the opponent says we can show that the direction of the point to the center, and it will make it more stable, like the opponent draw on the blackboard. And the reviewer, in our opinion, we think that the coefficient of the function will affect the consequence. But in this case, we agree with the opponent because it's just like that. We're going to discussion about the trend of the coefficient of friction. And the reporter says the first layer increased the most. And the opponent just say why the sharp slope happened. And in our opinion, we think that the trend line of the dots can't be connected at all the line because it's not continuous. So if the height is increase the height of the tennis ball tower, and we think the coefficient of the friction will not increase too. And we think the coefficient of the friction should be the same all the time. Okay, and here's the third discussion of them. And they talk about the trend of the coefficient to friction, and the reporter says the coefficient will keep increase, and the opponent says it can't have friction that much. And the reviewer, in our opinion, we think that there's a limit of the friction because it's always we told them on this page. And next one, they also discussion about the pyramid shape, and the reporter says there's no limit, and the opponent says it will have limit and it can be considered to collapse. But we think there's a limit to have a tennis ball tower. And here's the point that means the growth friction is wrong because we think that's opposite, but they didn't discuss about this. And the reporter can't write the line of the trend because the ball is just like layers and just like this. Okay, thank you very much.
This is our calculation method of friction. I measure alpha is the alpha is this way is n f times cosine alpha, and this way is n times sine alpha. So cosine is on the top, so it's tangent. And what we calculate is the force between every pair of the ball is the final final situation. Okay, let's go. Thank you.
From the degree, we want to start.
I would like to ask, you mentioned that there is a limit on the number of layers. And you mentioned that there's a definition, but the number of calories is also limited by the position of which factor of these two is the most important one.
I think it's definitely the coefficient of friction because the deformation comes in a bit later because it needs a certain height for deformation to happen.
Okay. The opponent mentioned two factors which will limit the number of layers.
I think it's same as the opponent. I think the coefficient of the friction will
More important.
yes, more important.
What about
Signal limit in a theoretically, but in real life, it will cause some the both height and G value and every height it will affect it.
Actually, I want to actually very similar to the Professor Gang. I want to see you give us a very good suggestion that about the structure limits you put information on the call. But my problem is why the information is always go the negative way. I'm not positive. Depends the effect and then maybe information. You can give up more higher topics.
Can you please rephrase the question? Sorry.
Okay. Information
Yes.
is the maybe the key by community. Yeah. But your suggestion is information can cause a lower friction or lower friction effect. But my information can change the shape.
I think what deformation changes is that deformation changes the normal force because the normal force has to be straight, or otherwise if the normal force tilts, the entire system of friction is completely lost. So the deformation basically tilts the angle of the normal force. So basically, with a normal force, the entire friction doesn't establish anymore. So it basically crumbles down. So that's what deformation changes. Yes.
What is
Okay, I think it's because the coefficient of the friction is not able to support the other forces that are caused by the environment or by the human, so it will just like collapse.
Okay. I know the reporter, they did not do exactly the experiment.
Yes.
How about the opponent reviewer? And did you try the experiment yourself?
Yes.
What's
So
the most difficult part?
I think the most difficult part is when you're trying to stack upward, and the most important one is the upper fold. So we did up to 3 layers, and so the the number we just mentioned, 0.9 something, that's the maximum coefficient of friction that we can find.
Okay, how about the
So that's
reducer?
Okay, we have did this experiment and we use the used ball because of the new ball have two small coefficient of friction and the used ball have the bigger coefficient of friction, so that the used ball is more able to just like comment tennis ball tower, and we use the pyramid size and just pull out the like just use the pyramid and just pull out this ball and count the chance for the ball.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to ask one question. In the question, we talk about this change the number of balls per layer. And then I found a very detailed discussion about that. And the second question is, got two ideal case. There will be two coefficient of friction. One is, say, the table and the tennis ball, and the other is the tennis ball. So to ensure this stability, is there any relation between these two friction coefficients?
You mean when changing the arrangement, like adding more balls to a layer?
Yeah, that's the first question.
Oh, so I think the entire system definitely changes, but what doesn't change is the effect of friction that does on the entire system.
So to become less stable, almost stable, you increase the ball.
I think it definitely becomes less stable. Yes, because well, with that ball, it is easier to control all the factors because there are only three balls. That's right.
And in our opinion, we think that the friction of a desk have to be able and have to be enough to let the balls on the table to be stable, and the coefficient of the friction of the ball have to let each other to be stable, and it have to be big enough to let each other to be stable.
Yeah, it's basically like the top. Okay.
The ground for the force situation is another thing as the other. So we can without considering.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so first one for the recorder is score 3, 3, 4, 4. Sorry. 3, 3, 4, 4. Okay. And then for the components, the score 7, 7, 7, 5, 8. Okay. And then for the reviewer. 6, 7, 7, 8, 7. 就是变得每年长大，所以可以就比较。
We would like to challenge question number 14.
We'd like to reject this challenge.
We would like to challenge question number 10.
We'd like to accept the challenge. Yes, we will be using it. 就把这个消掉了。OK，那明天来我这边抽。
后面的灯就关掉了，点先。
Experiment process, its theory, and I'll explain a very important definition, it's the size of the droplets, and then I'll explain the final conclusion, which is our parameters that we will discuss, and the references. So, first, the common statement. The common statement states that when a drop of water mixture, or like, for example, water alcohol is deposited on surface of a hydrophobic liquid, for example, vegetable oil, the resulting drop is sometimes fragmented into smaller droplets. Investigate the parameters that affect the fragmentation and the size of the final droplets. So we define final as after, well, as we'll see later, there will be a rib or a water droplet. And after the rim is broken, we call that as the final droplet. Okay, so we're talking about the experimental setup. We define liquid as a non-organic. The other liquid that can match with water and sample the water mixture. And restricted to liquid that is hydrophilic and lipophilic at the same time. So this includes like phenol, aspartic alcohol, etc. And we use the volumes. So the setup is that we drop the mixture into a dish with water in it, and each drop will be approximately 10 microliters. And we drop them from low height so that the impact from pipe will be significant. So this is a brief demonstration video of what we do. So as you can see, we'll form this inside circle, which we call the rim. And as the rim breaks, we'll release smaller droplets into the outer circle, and that is the denominator. So our main theory here is the spreading coefficient. So the spreading coefficient is the difference between work of addition and work of completion. So it's essentially the difference of the work which equals to the surface tension of the injected liquid plus the surface tension of underlaid liquid minus the interfacial tension and minus 2 times 2 surface tension of the equation equals to this equation. We can then apply this to our situation, which is between oil and air, and the oil in the mixture, and get this equation. And when the spreading coefficient is larger than 0, the spreading occurs and the droplets are created. However, this is not the final equation. Please look at it. This is the Laplace equation. This equation shows that the difference between the outer layer of the liquid and the inner layer of the liquid, delta P, is defined as the tension coefficient times R1 1 divided by R1 minus 1 divided by R2, in which R1 and R2 are the curvature of the droplet. So for example, the droplet is like this in the water surface. This will be R1. This will be R2. Now moving the equation around, we can get that the coefficient is actually the difference in the pressure divided by this expression. And supposedly, after using this on all of our coefficients, we'll get a different equation in which the value is correct. However, after some observation, we have found that in our specific case, this value almost doesn't change at all. Meaning that no matter what, this remains the same. Means that although in some cases non-Laplace equation may correct the value of the equation, in our case it supposedly doesn't. Please go back to the example. So first, what goes here eventually free? What does the inner circle measure? So brief of the transformation that we showed in the video. It actually enters the back here and is releasing small droplets outside. And then as continues, it decreases in size and ultimately it pops and releases all its contents outside. So theorem number 1, which is a model, this is the graphic version part. So this part explains the creation of a droplet by, if you look at this picture, the rim is represented by this big droplet. And at the edge of it, there's smaller, thinner layers. And the evaporation theory thinks that at this place, the evaporation theory is enough to create a break in this connection and thus releasing a droplet. And this theory will really depend on the mixture that is used within the with water. For example, if it's ethanol or is isopropyl alcohol, the evaporation rate difference because the difference in their droplet relation. And then the next theory, which is the major one, this is the solution one, which is the major one. This is because our mixtures are both lipophilic and hydrophilic. They are able to dissolve in the oil. So this means that at that thin layer, some of the molecules will be able to dissolve and cause the release of the bond has the connection has been break and the droplet is breaking. So this whole thing effect is called the Marconi effect, in which a high circulation and low circulation create this droplet release phenomenon. So we did several experiments with this phenomenon, and first we try to use different kind of mixture. So first we use IPA along with water, and we'll change our concentration of the mixture, and we'll observe the diameter of the final droplets. And the diameter of the final droplet is being decided using the tracker software. So if you look at this graph, as the concentration increases, the final droplet size decreases. And then I'll explain this later. So, and then if you look at experiment, we use N panel and the same independent variable and independent variable. But this time, it does the same thing, but the graph expression moves backward. Then when we look at the third one, which uses ethanol, you will see the more extreme case in the picture, in which the graph has totally moved to the right one. So what does this actually mean? This means that we have several speculations. First, because these mixtures have different liquid viscosity, means that they dissolve into oil at different rates. So they may need different concentration in the mixture to allow them to create that break in the connection, so that droplet are actually created. And the more that they're at a higher concentration, the more often they dissolve, the droplet size are smaller because there's less gathering at the edges before they get released. And then there's our speculation number 2. So we think that the concentration is on the range that makes certain coefficient to be greater than 0. The higher it is, the more fine the rim will be chopped, since the liquid molecules collide with oil in the rim. And then the speculation number 3 is when as we say, the velocity, we can skip this tangent. So other possible parameters that we have investigated that you may be interested in is the height. And we have tested that possibly because of the viscosity of the oil, the height in which we drop the droplet doesn't really significantly affect the result, as you can see in the next page. Here, you can see that this, look at edge cases, this when we drop it at almost 0 centimeters high, and this when we drop it at 100 centimeters high, the result is almost identical. And this is our data. So we're trying to gather things around here. The problem statement asks us about what parameters actually affect the results. So after our extent, we have several important factors. First is the surface tension. The surface tension is the spreading coefficient is really dependent on this, and the spreading coefficient really decides how the liquid forms. And secondly, this type of liquid will affect the result, and this is on multiple dimensions. The liquid's liquidity, as well as surface tension, as well as other, for example, evaporation rate, may affect how the droplet has been formed. For example, it may be faster evaporating and also good at dissolving into oil, so the droplet creation will be extremely fast. And then the type of oil actually affect the result, since the oil tension and its ability to dissolve other liquids may affect the droplet creation. And lastly, as we saw it in the Venn diagram, the concentration of the mixture greatly affects the droplet size. We have also investigated what parameters probably doesn't affect the result. For example, the droplet height of the mixture probably doesn't affect the result. Additionally, we have also done other experiments about the volume. We have discovered that the volume, to some extent, is affect the result. It doesn't significantly affect the release. So, however, we acknowledge that there are several unmeasurable parameters that we have not been able to consider in our current experiment. So, first is temperature. We just control it at room temperature, and it's hard to control the droplet temperature and the dish temperature at the same temperature, so that we can investigate its effect. So we just let it be at room temperature. And then the atmosphere, the pressure will be very hard to alter. And I know drip the mixture is difficult to, well, we haven't investigated that yet. And the degree of solution mixing is also a possible factor, but we believe that we have 100% mixed mixture before dropping them. So this is probably not an issue. And these are my references and literature for this in my presentation. So first question, why is your mixture colored in blue? Colored in blue? Yes. That is just for demonstration purpose. So that is just so you use full coloring? Yeah, we use. So do you think full coloring will affect the process of fragmentation for the fibers? Yes, but we didn't use that when we were doing the experiment. We only use that when we were filming the demonstration videos. Okay. So in the experiment, you can still measure. Yes. Observe it. Okay. Yes, because the tracker software is actually very sensitive to where it's changing. Okay. Yes. Okay. Next one. Can you explain why? So the concentration is proportional to the is proportional to the opposite of droplet size. Yes. Okay. And well, I wouldn't say the relation is directly opposite, but there is certain. Okay. And is your in your go to the parameters that you did. Does the parameters affect the size of the final droplet, or does it also affect the process of fragmentation?
Yes, they actually affect
Both of them?
both of them.
Okay.
And but however, if you are talking about the evaporation rate and the velocity, okay, they affect the.
Okay, so next one, did you so could you show me where how the concentration will affect the process of fragmentation?
Now, in this page, something like this.
How would you divide it to reach a final droplet where you can measure?
We are mentioning at the start of PPT.
Like that.
Problem statement. We will focus on the parameters that will affect the fragmentation, so which means the process of fragmentation, and also the size of the final droplet. So, and the crucial point will be how the water mixture will affect. So the summary of the report. So it has a very clear structure, and the explanation of the theory is very precise. And the problem is that it says many things in its slide, and I don't see the connection between the theory and the conclusion. And it can consider the connection between the time and the radius of the ring, which we will talk about, which it involves more observation for the fragmentation process, rather than just showing some results of the final size of the droplet. Okay, so points to be discussed. First of all, the phenomenal explanation. So we'll be defining when the expulsion is stable. So when you can measure the final droplet, and they in their theory they use the spreading coefficient, and they said that the evaporation is minor, and the dissolution, which I don't really understand how it affects the phenomenon, and also the Mercalli effect. Okay, and their external method. So they use different kinds of mixture, including IPA and ethanol, and they control the droplet so that each time the droplet is the same. And but here I will be asking about some details in the experiment. For example, what containers they use, so that maybe it will affect how the final droplet and how the final droplet is distributed. And also in the parameters. So in the beginning, they stated that they control it at a low height because they believe because they don't want the impulse to affect their phenomenon. And then they did a experiment proving that the height will not affect the final size of the droplet. But again, I believe that they can give some explanation on why it wouldn't affect it, and also because changing the height will change the potential energy, and whether the potential energy transfer would affect this phenomenon. And also they also didn't give a clear explanation of their chart of why something will be proportional and something wouldn't. Yes. And we will also be focusing in on the speed of the serving, which I think is one very key factor when we talk about the process of fragmentation. And I would like to move into our discussion. Okay. So let's start with our, could you define again what stable is here?
Stable? What do you mean final?
Yes, I mean like because
you mean final because like you asked about definition.
Yeah, I mean I know you mentioned your final drop, so it's a process, so it spreads and then it collapses, right?
And then it finally breaks and then it was content. Yes.
And
final here as we'll measure the size of the droplets right after the frame that it breaks.
And do you have any data about the final size of the droplet?
The final size of the droplet are clearly shown. It is too small. The final size of the droplet, if you look at our data set, it's clearly here. This is the final size of the droplet.
So this is like for each droplet, right?
For each droplet at different concentration.
And your y-axis,
This is a droplet size.
so it's centimeter.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that the error point came from that you measured all the droplets outside.
I will explain the error point to you. So the way we do this is more like a statistical way. Because we know that each droplet will be slightly different. So we measure the size of the droplets and find the median.
By the median. So that's why. Is that why there's an error?
Yes, that's why there is an error point. That's because we have this statistical process and we think it's proper to show error point.
Okay. So can you explain why? What's the mass fraction of IPA in the mixture reaches?
My mass fraction of IPA.
No. I understand that. Once it reaches 0.73, so it wouldn't have a final droplet,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And is that because it comes up and it collapses?
Yes.
And
It just releases all its content without releasing smaller droplets.
or is it?
It is still there. And the reason we think that happens is because we say that it dissolves into the oil.
Okay, so the alcohol is still there.
The alcohol is still there. You can see the dish mixture.
Yes.
Yes.
But however, you mentioned about evaporation, right?
Yes.
So I understand that if you have a higher fraction in IPA, it will have a higher evaporation rate.
But we also say that evaporation is a minor factor, which you only affect here. So it's a thing that so for example we have 10 minutes, we have 10 metric per liter in each chocolate, and 0.75%. Well, 75% is 7.5 microliter. Even that small amount of ethanol or whatever mixture it is can evaporate in a brief second. So this is just as we say, it's a minor one. So evaporation, so it's still there. So what I'm trying to explain here is that it's still there. It's not evaporating.
Okay, so what you're saying is that when I change the fraction of the alcohol, which means that I'm changing the concentration, right?
Yes.
So can you go to the chart where you show the concentration and the this one is next one. Is this the same thing using different?
Yes, just using different kind of.
Okay, so this is. So could you give a more detailed explanation like this? Because you're saying that the alcohol is in there wouldn't change, right?
I don't understand what you mean.
So because you said evaporation is minor, so I can assume that throughout this whole process, it's, for example, if I use a 50% alcohol, it's 50% to the end, and because once I use an 80% alcohol, because why does it come out and come back? And without any can you give a physical explanation?
So the reason for that is for the dissolving. It's because the mixture dissolves into the liquid because before the chocolate is able to freeze. So if we are going to look at this, what is actually happening is that before this thin layer is able to form, it dissolves. So essentially, because of the large dissolution there, so this thin layer retracted.
So the alcohol will dissolve into the oil.
Yes.
Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So about the drop height. So yes. So you stated that the drop height wouldn't affect the final.
Yes. According to observation, the drop height does not significantly affect the final results.
So could you explain how? Could you give a guess at how the potential energy or transfer to the kinetic energy or I guess the impulse that the droplet has will affect this whole process?
Our current guess about this situation is that can I use the microphone? So this is your oil layer. Yes, as your droplet falls down, or they have different kinetic energy when it goes down.
Yes.
When it enters here, mostly it's going to flat. It's really going to like splash. However, the liquid that we use in oil have very high viscosity. So what we're speculating here is that because of the high viscosity, essentially the heat is not spreading. So although there might be more movement around, in the end, still will be able to form a stable droplet mixture.
Okay. But here, so because you see, if you have a droplet coming down, so if this, for example, if it has a bigger impulse, so it's going to form a droplet right here, right? Yes. It wouldn't splash because the oil has high viscosity. But when it has a high impulse, so it tends to. Does it tend to go, for example, deeper, or does it tend to go, in, like, for example, spread into a horizontal component?
Actually, it goes because as shown there, there's no difference in the horizontal size.
Yes, but what I'm indicating here is I agree that this might be this might be a minor effect to the final size of the droplet. But however, if if you're talking about, for example, the spreading velocity of this droplet, then the initial spreading velocity. So if I draw a chart here, which means the spreading velocity and to time, then if I drop droplet from 10 centimeters, then it probably will be like this. And if I drop from 100 centimeters, then I'm thinking that wouldn't it be like because it has a more energy, wouldn't it have a greater impulse? But however, it reaches it still reaches this part.
Yes. However, I would like to remind you that the spreading of the droplet is totally dependent on the spreading coefficient S, which means that no matter how the energy is there, when you set it down, the speed in which you spread the smaller droplets is totally just dependent on the tension. And having a different momentum doesn't affect the tension. So it doesn't affect the surface tension. So with no difference in surface tension, there shouldn't be a significant change in the speed.
Okay. So could you explain because you use different kinds of mixture and it has different surface tension, right?
Yes.
And do you have the same? Is it the same result or is there a difference in the results?
There is of course difference in results. So as I explained here, this result here is actually a composition of different factors. So we change the mixture, but as I explained earlier,
Can you go to the go back go down. Where there's a page where you show your conclusion. Conclusion that is like your whole comparison.
whole comparison, you mean like that's like there?
Also, there isn't a graph where you show.
Yes, this is a conclusion page.
Go to this page.
This.
Okay. This. No, this is. So the type of oil, you mentioned the type of oil, surface tension, the effect of thermal modulus, so did you in fact use different type of oil?
We didn't.
Then why did you include it in your parameters?
Do you think that it would affect it? We think it would affect it because we see that the difference in surface tension have already affected the result in the device. And because the spreading coefficient include the tension.
So do you think?
So this will affect it.
So I believe because surface tension, so the oil has a surface tension, and the water mixture has a surface tension.
Yes.
So what causes a Marconi effect is the difference between the surface tension.
Yes.
Right. So when you change the water mixture's surface tension to let you actually. Okay. So in our discussion we may discuss about the parameters that will affect, for example, the height and also I made some suggestions that they can include the spreading speed in their analysis and data, and also they might need some more quantitative or theoretical equation to for example quantify how the surface tension will affect the compact size of the droplet or the fragmentation process, which includes the spreading speed or which they didn't really focus on in their experiment. Yes.
There's currently a technical issue with the technical cost.
Okay, sure.
Yes.
Which table that page that your
Introduce our theory.
Yeah.
Go to almost sun. Yes. Yes.
You have mentioned a lot of theory, right?
Yes. Actually, they're just
Yes, and which theory do you think have affected the trouble?
mixture into oil, which is the major one that creates the droplets.
Yes. I will consider that maybe the temperature or the humidity from the environment will affect the result.
I have listed it here. The temperature actually may affect the result. We haven't measured. And the reason that the temperature might affect the result is because temperature may have impacts on humidity, and they certainly may have impacts on surface tension. So they may potentially affect the result. However, we're not able to simultaneously control the temperature of the dish and the droplet. So we decided not to do this.
And how do you think about humidity?
Humidity. We think that humidity shouldn't be a big factor. And the reason for it, the effect should be very small that it can be negative. Because if you're considering that in the droplet process, some more water may be mixed into the mixture, or other effects may become affected, I don't think that will be a great effect because the humidity doesn't really affect the surface tension between like water and air or oil and air. It's usually the same with
Would you give some suggestions to reporter?
Yes, so I heard your question. So I believe that the most important theory should be the difference between the surface tension and the when we change the concentration of the liquid. So we will actually change the surface tension. And for example, if we if we get the surface tension of the oil to be the same, then the difference in the concentration will cause a thermal effect to happen, and which would then lead to this phenomenon. And of course, there's other. Yes, of course, there's other.
Yeah, I understand your
how different mixture situations influence the size of each shard. And if this is about a discussion between a reporter and opponent. Opponent has asked what the style means, because the reporter didn't clearly tell them what the style means. And reporter's answer is, when droplet stops spreading, let's make this stable. And question 2. Opponent asks reporters that how thickness of the droplets connects to the phenomenon. And the answer from the reporter is that due to the experiment result, it affects on the vertical axis. And about the pros and cons for pros, their theory matches reality well, and about cons, their lack of the units in their data and their charts. And their charts didn't have a clear title about what the chart is, what mixture is about the chart. And they have only considered they did consider many situations of each parameters, but they skip a lot of situations. And about musicals, they didn't mention. I just explained that they consider humidity, but they answer that they think that humidity will influence signals, but they didn't mention that how they think humidity only influence the result signals. This is over.
So I'm here for concluding remarks. So in discussion 1, we talked about what is the definition of a droplet, which is I defined before. We measure the droplet after the half break, and we call that the final state. And secondly, will alcohol dissolve into oil is our discussion. And yes, because alcohol have chemical structure that has zero physical moment and have no hydrogen bond, which means that it's a non-polar substance, which essentially means that it will dissolve into non-polar substance like oil. And our most important discussion is perhaps what highly affect the droplet size and the time. And we believe that it would not affect very much. The droplet might go more into the oil, but do not have a real chemical stretch and do have a difference in the final result. So some conclusion. We have cleared some of the misunderstanding that we have in the presentation. However, we do believe that the opponent seems to grasp onto some of the irrelevant parameters, such as the evaporation rate, which has not been that significant. And we have explained them to them that they are perhaps more minor factor. And on the other hand, the opponent also gave us very interesting points to perhaps investigate later for the extension of this experiment. And I think that is my concluding remarks.
We turn on light. So let's see if we have any questions from you. And we'll start.
Your experimental data shows that high concentration of mixture will cause a smaller size of drop. That's totally true.
The reason for that is because higher concentration of the mixture means a faster release because it dissolves faster. And since the size of the droplet depends on the thin layer at the bed of the ground, which means that if they dissolve and faster and release it faster, there's less time for it to gather there. So the droplet size increases.
I have a hint of why of this experimental
So I believe if the experiment is like this, then it's because so the concentration is higher, so it causes surface tension, a greater surface tension difference. So after the fragmentation process, the final droplet will be hard because the alcohol tends to evaporate faster.
My opinion is that the surface tension will in fact that it's easy to spread or not. So I think it plays an important role in this experiment.
Any other questions? Please.
How the size of the container, or that, for example, the height and the radius, how do you think this may affect?
Oh, we have actually investigated this, and we have made sure that because our droplet is only 10 micrometers, we make sure that when we drop it, we only drop it into the center of the dish, and we won't reach the end of the dish. So when we said the size of the dish won't affect it.
I believe that the greater, the bigger the size of the disc is, the better, because first of all, the droplet would not touch the container, and then and then we can neglect the adhesion of the oil at the side. So if the container is too small, it will be like this, and which I think we should consider. But if the disc is great enough, then at the spreading part, we can assume it has a faster surface.
My opinion is totally the same as the ultimate opinion.
You mentioned spread coefficient, which is the difference between the surface tension between the two people. Right? You also, because you have two kind of liquid in the mixture, have you tried to investigate the effects of the difference of the surface tension in that two liquid in the mixture?
Okay. To talk about these questions, we have tried to do this by just for like all the surface tension coefficient for all the discs that we use, and we try to somehow find the surface tension coefficient for the mixture. However, we weren't really necessarily that, and reason is because as the concentration changes, the surface tension will be like changing because of different mixtures. So, for example, if it's 50% more than 50% alcohol, we'll have a surface tension of perhaps A, and then if you increase this amount of alcohol, the surface tension will change again to perhaps B. So, there will certainly be some changes based on the mixture amount and the kind of mixture, but we haven't completely investigated on that.
Do you agree with reporters?
Only partly. Something to add.
Which part that you don't agree?
I believe that the surface tension will change because of evaporation. Because the higher the concentration is, the lower the surface tension of the mixture is. So when I evaporate, the concentration will get lower, and the surface tension will actually change throughout this.
What about you?
I totally agree with this report.
The reporter would like to kind of remind the opponent that the evaporation rate is actually very low, and it will significantly affect the surface tension, and it only affects volume. The surface tension for any kind of liquid is a constant.
Okay, I think that's enough.
So the question for the reporter. So you try to distinguish this effect, this vibration and this dissolution.
Yes.
But don't you think they are actually serving the same role?
Pardon?
Is the evaporation and dissolution essentially the probably the same thing? One just drive a liquid go outward, the other one go
Yes,
inward.
their effects are similar, which is why we consider both theorems.
Yeah,
But
the
I
one
mean,
is the
like,
evaporation is
there's,
did you measure?
we weren't able to go very accurately measure it, and what we can search for the evaporation rate of each liquid, and perhaps do a speculation. However, we do believe that because the evaporation rate is usually very small, in a short period of time, in which the rate breaks, which is the main question of the solution, but we haven't accurately measured it.
What's your view? Are these two
You mean the evaporation?
serving the same thing? Same effect?
Yes, it will have the same. It will have the same effect. And so for me, I would just say the evaporation will be a thing to consider here. Yes.
For the reporter, 5756. Sorry, okay.
The last one is
The next one is 7.
Yeah, 7757. And for the opponent, 76767. Okay. For the reviewer, 5 6 5 3 5 4 4.